Welcome to the JAMODI podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it. How do you live out your culture on a daily basis?
Again, I hope that living out the culture on a daily basis starts from the top down. I think, that if they see how committed and how much I love this program, and, whether it's being in dress code when I go back up into the building, or, the way I speak to teachers, the way that we carry on our practices. We talked about, best practices for best practices. Well, one of the things we always try to do is always have a practice schedule out and posted for them, and the gym clean and our equipment out. And again, everybody has different schedules and different expectations for them professionally throughout the course of the day. I get that. But I don't ever want our kids to come into one of our practices or get on the bus going to one of our games and think that we have done anything less than preparing as much as we possibly could for that practice, for that game. And so I think if that's going to be the culture that I want, then they need to see that from me and from our staff first.
How do you go about, because I can see it from you and what from watching from far away that you're the real deal. Like what you're saying right now, that you really live it out. You're really this way from day to day. How do you get your teenage leaders, your teenagers on your team? Your assistant coaches will follow you, and they will. Then your players are watching too. But how do you enable them to lead and follow your culture as well from day to day?
I think part of that is understanding that, all of the things that we try to provide for our kids, they're all a process. They all start at a different level. Some may be coming from two parents. I mean, I've had Taylor Luster, who played for me, whose dad was as an assistant coach at TCU, and Kelvin Lewis, whose dad was an assistant coach at TCU, and Neil Doherty, whose dad was the head coach at TCU. I mean, some of those guys have come in with natural leadership abilities. Other leaders that we've had, maybe didn't understand what leadership even was. So again, differentiating what you provide for each of these kids is the same as differentiating what you provide for your leaders. And some of them are trying really hard to be great leaders, just don't have any idea how to do it. So I think it's even recognizing where your leaders are and helping them understand what leadership really is. And so having individual talks with them, having small group talks with them, if you've got a small group that, you're really looking at leadership from, and just helping them understand what leadership truly is. And I'm really big on leading by example first. And so whether that's me and my staff, or whether that's our team captains, our team leaders, that they understand that before you can start verbally trying to lead anybody else, you better be leading them by example first. And that's just me and my own personal thoughts on leadership. But, just understanding that leadership is a process, just like their maturation process, or how they're getting better at honing their skills of basketball, is that you can't expect them to be there. You have to understand that it's a process, and you're constantly trying to move that needle of leadership as well.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to look at leadership that way. I mean, with shooting, everybody understands that it's a process. You start at one point, and then you work really, really, really hard, and you grow, but it's slow and sometimes painful. It's not just quick and easy. But I think sometimes I've fallen short there. As I expect, what? Here's what I define leadership as, guys. You got to get there. You got to get there. And then maybe my temper, my expectations are unrealistic for how they are moving towards becoming the leaders that we can see, or we think they could be. So great reminder that even in leadership, it will take time and it's gradual, but we just have to be, like you said, we have to be consistent ourselves and make sure we're giving the example, but give them players time to get there.
Yeah. And I think, and again, just another area to be reflective on, are you developing good leaders in your program? And if not, what can you change? What can you do to help develop them? And we talked about differentiated coaching. Well, I mean, you may have to differentiate how you're trying to get your leaders there from year to year.
Coach Butterfield at UTD, I was fortunate
Uh-huh.
enough to talk to him, and he has a really cool concept of a leadership group, and it's a group of 3 or 4 guys that he chooses every year, and it's almost as if he communicates to the group, and then that group is really in charge of making sure culture and communication and the vibe of the team, the locker room, and everything's going in the right direction. Do you have anything with, maybe it's every year with captains or with a group of leaders that you have in place or that you do? Or is it
Again,
by
I don't know.
feel? Is it by
Yeah,
feel?
it really is. It's
Yep.
really by feel and trying to feel what that group of leaders needs from me to help their leadership be even better. Some of it's very natural, and it's easier to kind of set back and just watch and see where they may need growth as a leader. Other areas. I mean, this year, I mean,
Yeah,
I brought
I was gonna ask you about this year with a younger group. It might be you taking a little bit more control and showing them how to lead and taking the reins until you feel comfortable or they get it a little bit more.
Yep. And and again, some things work for some teams, some years, and
Yeah.
other things don't. One of the greatest ideas and we've done it periodically in the past, is having leadership pods and breaking down 3 or 4 areas that's important for you as a coach to have good leadership in that locker room in. And it might be a leadership pod that's over team discipline and what the expectations are. Now we're writing that pod is writing standards, team standards, gold medal standards, if you
Mm.
will. Another one might be, getting out and participating and doing things in the community. And so you have a community service pod that's with a leader of that pod, and just the different things that might be important to you, and some of your core beliefs, core value, as a head coach. And that's always a great idea if you have the right locker room and the right team to do that with. I loved that idea. We've done that
Yeah.
several years.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.